Okay, that's what I want.
That's what you want.
Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Jo Massaro with Yahweh Sisterhood Book Club, and we're so excited that you're with us tonight. If you don't know about us, we actually discuss a book each month, but the great thing is you actually get to meet the author. And so tonight we are with Johnnie Alexander. Hi. So she's our very special guest, and what I have found with most authors, they don't like to talk about themselves. So I have something that I'd like to read, so you'll get a little bit better idea of who Johnnie is. Johnnie Alexander is a wannabe vagabond with a heart for making memories. Whether at home, in Oklahoma, or on the road, she creates characters you want to meet and imagine stories you won't forget. And you certainly did that with this book.
Thank you.
Her award-winning debut novel, Where Treasure Hides, is a CBA bestseller and has been translated into Dutch and Norwegian, which I didn't know. She also writes contemporary romances, cozy mysteries, and historical novellas. Her first indie novella, released in 2019, is part of the Resort to Romance series. She's also teamed up with other authors for the Mosaic Collection, a series of contemporary novels releasing in 2019-2020. Johnnie is on the executive boards of Serious Writer, Inc., co-hosts an online show called Writer's Chat, and interviews inspirational authors for Novelists Unwind. And I'm in the position of interviewing you. No pressure. She also teaches at writers' conferences and for Serious Writer Academy. Shaping her vagabond life are Grit, her her happy-go-lucky collie, and Rugby, her raccoon treeing, is it Papillon?
Papillon, yeah.
Yes.
Little dog.
Yes. I had to look that up, by the way.
With the ears.
With the ears, yes. Okay, and we're going to make sure we post her website and all kinds of information so you can connect with her. But so we're so excited to have you.
Oh, thanks. I'm excited to be here. I really am. This is fun.
So maybe you could just share a little bit about how we met.
Yeah, I was trying to remember. I think we met through Serious Writer. My daughter, Bethany Jett, who is also an author, she writes nonfiction, is the owner, one of the owners of Serious Writer. And I don't know for sure how you and Bethany connected, but then Bethany connected you and me because of my Novelist Unwind site, because
right.
I get to interview inspirational authors, and they talk about, and they're novelists, and they talk about their novels, and we're hoping that that you guys might be interested in interviewing some of those novelists as well. Some great stories out there. So Jo and I connected, and now she's become a regular member of our Writers Chat community, and we're really glad to have her on there. If you're interested in writing, it's a great place to be. I'll put a little plug, every Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Central, 11 o'clock Eastern. We are on Zoom, and you can find us just by doing Writers Chat members Facebook group. So we're pretty easy to find, or Jo could probably help you find us too. It's just a great time, and we really are glad to have Jo as part of that community too.
Well, I have learned so much. Every week it's like amazing.
It is fun.
So much information.
It's a good time.
It is. So one of my first questions was, how did you start writing?
That's always such a hard question to answer, because it's one of those things that has been in my heart since I was I was making up stories when I was really little, but writing.
Hopefully not any that got you into trouble.
No. Just in my head. I didn't really write many down on paper, but I was just always making up stories in my head. And I really wanted to write, but it was it meant so much to me to do it that I was afraid to do it. So I thought, if I'm ever going to be a writer, I'm going to be a nonfiction writer, because that's more objective. You have just certain things you need to do. In a nonfiction book, it just seemed to me like an easier thing, because I just wasn't going to take a risk on writing fiction and finding out I was a failure. So, and then in I think it was 2003, so it's been a long time ago now, I participated in National Novel Writing Month, which is also called NaNoWriMo. And during the month of November, you write 50,000 unedited words. So you're not allowed to edit as you go along. And I had such a mess, when it was finished, because you're not editing these words, but I realized that I loved creating characters. I loved creating, just writing dialogue. And then I had one of those milestone birthdays that's like, you know what, if I don't do it now, it's never going to happen.
Is it one of those 29 birthdays again?
Yeah. Yeah, one of those. And I started going to major writing conferences and won a couple awards at conferences, and then eventually got an agent and eventually got my debut novel published, and I've written several novels since then. So that was a 10-year journey from the time I did NaNoWriMo for the first time. I was still working full time. I think I was still in grad school then too. Had a couple kids still at home. So it wasn't like I was writing full time by any means. It was just still dabbling. But Where Treasure Hides debuted in 2013. So that is 10 years after. And it also was started as one of those NaNoWriMo projects. I think I did it in 2010 or 2011, where I just wrote a very rough draft in those 30 days without editing, and then just kept going back to it and back to it and back to it and polishing it and rewriting and revising, and then it won the American Christian Fiction Writers Historical Genesis Contest in the historical category. And for the inspirational community, that is like one of the highest honors an unpublished author can get, is to win a Genesis contest. So I was very proud that it won that, and then so that a publisher became interested.
So writing is not just for you and your family.
No, I mentioned Bethany already. Yeah, she, in fact, is having a book releasing now, and I think again next month. So she's very, very busy, and I believe she's your guest next month with her co-author.
Yes, so I was just going to say Platinum Faith is coming out. I'm on the pre-order list waiting for it to come. I'm hoping it comes before the day of the interview. But Michelle Medlock Adams and Bethany will both be with us next month, so we're very excited about having you 1 month and then having your daughter the next month.
That is exciting. It really has been exciting to share a writing journey with her. And Bethany will tell you, she was very scared to go to her first writers conference, and I wasn't able to go that year to go with her. So I think I was over at her house taking care of her kids, helping her husband take care of her kids, and she got to go. And she won Writer of the Year at that conference. It was the Florida Christian Writers Conference, and that's an award I had also won one of the years I attended, so that was really cool. And even though I write fiction and she writes nonfiction, it has just been really fun to share our writing journeys together, and to just I don't even know. I mean, we bounce ideas off each other, just to be supportive and encouraging, and we vent to one another, because we can vent to one another safely. Yeah.
Well, I absolutely love this book, and I've been hearing from everybody how much they did as well. I'll tell you that I felt that somebody had cooked me my favorite meal, and I was just savoring every bite. And by the time I was done, I was full and happy.
Oh, I appreciate that.
It was beautifully written. It really was.
I do.
And there's a question that somebody's going to ask you later on.
Okay.
So,
I hope I can answer. I was telling you, you might have heard me. I have not actually read this book in quite a while. I have gone through it, skimmed it, looked up some notes and things. So I hope, don't stump me, but I'll do my best. I do have my copy, so if I need to look at a page number, I can.
Oh, yeah. Actually, let me do that. Now that I say that, I normally do that. But this is the book, Where Treasures Hide, or Where Treasure Hides by Johnnie Alexander. And we'll remember to do that throughout the time we're together.
Great.
So the backdrop of your story, obviously required some research.
Absolutely. A lot of research. I was in I lived in St. Cloud. I actually have moved quite a lot recently, but I had lived in St. Cloud, Florida for quite a long time. We have the small little library, and there was a book called Hitler's Soldiers in the Sunshine State. This was probably like in 1998 or something like that, a long time ago. And I was just so intrigued. I thought, Hitler's soldiers in the Sunshine State, what does that mean? Well, you know, Nazi POWs were brought over here because there was nowhere else to put them. And they were in camps throughout the United States and some in Florida. And I got really intrigued by that and actually wrote another novel based on an American actress. Actually, she's mentioned in Where Treasure Hides, the American actress that Ian gets involved with. I wrote her story, and it was just a lot of fun to do that. It is still unpublished, but I am working on it again because I would love to get it out there. So friends of mine read that story and they liked it and they wanted a sequel, but that story is very sad. And I said, you know, there can't be a sequel because everybody's dead. So what can I do? And I thought, oh, you know, I really liked Ian's character. He's in that book as a secondary, you know, he's involved in this mission with Marie, the actress. And I thought, I'm going to write Ian's story. And kind of leading up to that, as I did research into World War II for that first novel, I got very interested in two things, the art and the looting, because I did not know how pervasive that was and just all those details. And then also the children and how the children were hidden and the things that they went through. And so those two things just kept coming back to me just over and over and over again. It's like, you know, what do we treasure most? And, you know, we want to say we treasure children the most. And I think that's absolutely appropriate. And yet you see very early on in the story, Allison risks her life to save a painting. I mean, you know, she's ready to jump right in front of that thing. So, you know, it's an interesting question. And the Mona Lisa question, since you all have read the book, you know that that's in there. I struggled with putting that in there, but it truly was a question that students at that time period would talk about. You know, do you save the Mona Lisa or do you save a child? And so it just became kind of a running theme. So I just really wanted to kind of juxtapose those two ideas together. And this is kind of what happened. And it was great to do, you know, the research into the Monuments Men. I had not heard of them. I read, I read the book that the movie, The Monuments Men, was based on before it ever was a movie. So I was really excited when that movie came out. So it's just, oh my gosh, I mean, I could probably talk about the research forever because there was just so much. And it's so fascinating. And there's heroism and there's cowardice, and, you know, it just runs the whole gamut of everything, every human emotion.
Well, I never heard of the Monuments Men until I actually saw the movie, so I hadn't read the book yet. And I was absolutely fascinated by it all because I had no idea that all of this was happening.
It's such a fascinating topic. I mean, just that. So I knew I wanted Ian to be part of that. But then it was like I had to work within the framework of that original story. So it's like I had to get Ian, you know, to a certain place where he's a widower, or at least he thinks he is, and then you know, get him to why would he ever join the Monuments Men group? You know, so just trying to get him from place to place was one of the challenges of the book, but I think it worked.
It did. You know, you just reminded me of something. The theme of the book and children reminds me of a movie that's on Netflix right now, and I've got to get the name right. It's the Guernsey Literary and Potato Pie
Society.
Potato Peel Pie Society.
Something like that.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. So let me try it again. The Guernsey Literary Potato Peel Pie Society.
It's very good movie, and that's a good book too. I mean,
I just got it, so I'm going to read it. But I love that movie, and I've watched it more than once, just so you know.
Yeah, it's really, really good. But I mean, there is so much that happened in I don't know. There's a
Let
lot.
me just say this too, that in that movie, if you're a Downton Abbey fan, there are
Yes.
4 actors that are in there. So I was
That was
really
fun.
surprised. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was definitely fun. Okay, you beautifully weave in the world of art into your story. And I had said this, your description of the art was so, so beautiful that I actually did some research myself when you were talking about different pieces because I wanted to visually see what you were talking about.
Yeah. So some of the paintings or some of the artwork is real. The young
Yes.
girl reading, and actually, I thought I had it. I found it in a catalog that I had picked up in an estate sale, and like I said, I have moved frequently since then. So I don't have it. I wish I still did, so I could show it to you. But it just seemed like the perfect painting to add for that scene. And then I believe that Diana the Huntress, that piece of sculpture that's talked about, is also real because I can visualize it.
Yep.
The girl in the garden is not real, but I can tell you, I see it in my mind's eye. And I'm not an artist by any means. I have no talent drawing or anything.
I hear you.
That picture is so clear in my mind. I wish I could paint it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So war brought about a lot of different things. I remember my grandmother talking about how, the bombings and how they destroyed cities and towns and churches, especially as well, because she said that they were trying to go back and get some family records, but the churches were destroyed. And just the loss of life and the destruction of families and just so much that was involved in this war. And of course, I was born after the war. So, it's just something that you're reading about. You're not living that time frame. It's sort of like 9/11, for people that are born, they have no idea what it is to have experienced what this country experienced at the time. Yeah. So you also, I have this quote out of the book, and it says, "The future of the Third Reich required a sacrificial cleansing."
Yes, I had to look that up. I thought, oh my gosh! I said, what was I saying? And okay, so let's talk about Theodore for a moment. The Nazi, the Prussian officer. So I really wanted to. I didn't want to have a cardboard villain, and I figured one way to do that was to give him his own point of view. And so as a writer, we know that even the villain believes he's the hero of his own story.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted there to be times when he just he kind of falls apart a little bit too, especially when he sees the torture.
Yeah. Yeah, there were moments when I actually could feel empathy towards his character. Yep.
Yeah. So, I did not only with him, but also with one of the commandants of the first place where Ian was. I didn't want him again to just be, I didn't want them all to be the same. I wanted there to be some differences there. So I purposely did give Theodore his own point of view through the story so we could see that. And yeah, the whole quote says, Theodore loathed the man and his cold calculations. He's talking about Heinrich Himmler, who just, he had been talking about the numbers in the concentration camp, the numbers in the ghetto, the numbers forced to labor. I mean, these numbers are in the millions. They are huge. So Theodore loathes him, but he accepted the necessity of his work. The future of the Third Reich required a sacrificial cleansing. In one of the books I read, it talked about the huge migrations of peoples from just one country to another country. And they truly believed that, like, the Slavic people were second-class citizens, or hardly even citizens at all. They weren't really people, but they needed them because that was like the breadbasket of Europe, and they needed the food. But they truly felt that if they were able just to wipe out all the Jews, all the gypsies, everybody like that they would be creating a new and powerful world, and the world would be a better place. So So yeah, he believes it at some level, but Theodore's main objective is just to be part of the power. He just wants to be in that inner circle. And so he's going to swallow whatever, and kind of believes it too. I mean, as far as, he's one of them. So of course, he's, yes, I'm at the top. I'm blonde, blue-eyed, handsome, all of this. But he's also conflicted.
Yeah. He also had the desire to marry Allison and to
Yeah.
help.
Yeah.
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 And to have a new generation through their union.
Mm-hmm. And he justifies
Yes,
that.
he justifies
Yeah.
it. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. You what's the word I'm looking for? I just lost it. You weave in very, very beautifully some scriptures throughout the book. And one definitely caught my attention, and it was Psalm 32:7.
That was Ian's, right? That was
Yes.
Ian's scripture.
It
Yeah.
says, "You are my hiding place. You keep me safe from trouble. All around me are your songs of being made free."
Yeah. I really like that. And of course, we have to use the King James Version because that's what they would have read at the time. And it says, you compass me about with songs of deliverance. And it just seemed the perfect verse for somebody who, he's a soldier. He is, he fights at Dunkirk. He gets captured. He does not want to sit out the war in a concentration camp. He doesn't want that to be his story. He's also a little driven by his brother's drowning that, happens when they were children. It's a little bit of backstory there. And yet he does have this strong faith. And this is a verse that was prayed over him before he decided to try to escape from Colditz. And that Colditz Castle, I had never heard of it either, but my dear little St. Cloud Library also had this huge book on Colditz Castle. And it was where you were sent if you were escaping from other places. And it was supposed to be escape proof. It was not. There were a few people who did, but very few people did. Mm-hmm. And his escape is modeled after an escape that's told in that book. That was the easiest way for me to picture it in my mind. So yeah, I think this was just a verse that, he needed to be delivered, and he needed to be hidden even when he wasn't. Like, I believe he's in a tree at one point, and these Hitler Youth are around. And again, it's just like, hide me from their eyes, don't let them see me.
Well, you said something that is a learning curve for me, because I think I wrote this down, the scripture, not in the King James Version. And it would have been at that point in time.
Yeah. I was very careful to use the King James. And the other verse that Allison uses is one of my favorite verses, and has been since I was like in my late teens. It's strength and dignity are her clothing, and she smiles at the future. And that's not quite the way Allison knows it. I think it's strength and honor are her clothing, and she shall rejoice in time to come. Mm-hmm. So it's also a little bit different, but I knew, because that verse was so meaningful to me, that's a verse that I wanted to be meaningful to this character. And it turned out to be the perfect verse for her too, that she keeps going back to in times of trouble. It's that strength and honor. Just give me strength and honor, so that their lives were not easy. And you all know the ending of this book. It's not all wrapped up in a pretty bow, and things are happily ever after. And yet she still has to come to terms with, it's okay, because there's still another future, and there's eternal life, and there's, and that's going to be when there's going to be rejoicing. And we just, no matter what troubles we face on earth, God's there. He's with us. He's with us.
I just had a question. You talked a little bit about, the writing of the book, and how, the periods of time it took you. How did you feel? This is not on the list that I gave you, so because it's helpful to give, someone you're interviewing a list of some questions, so it's not all, how did you feel when you actually finished it? And, did you feel comfortable in submitting it, or?
Yeah. I think that there's always, I'm sure like the first time I read it, it was like, oh, I wish I could have changed. There's still always things you want to
Sure.
change. I think the story overall, I'm very proud of it. It's still, I think it's the best novel I've written. I've written several more since then, but I don't want to say but there. I've written contemporaries and cozy mysteries, and there's just not the depth to them, I guess, that there's not going to be as something like this. So I just still consider it probably the most compelling story I've written and the deepest story that I've written. And I hope that, that the first one, the one with Marie, the actress, and Ian, that story, I think it's going to be pretty much the same way. It's going to have these deeper themes and more angst, and there's, I don't know, I like angst. and I hope it'll be out within the next year. I mean, I'm really working hard to make that happen. So,
Okay.
it's, I did. It was, there might be a couple things I would have done different. You read the reviews, and it's gotten a lot of positive reviews, but there are a couple things, people say, well, they fell in love too fast. I thought, well, maybe that's true, but it was my first novel. So,
I love the fact that they fell in love so quickly.
good. Yay.
So what are you working on right now?
Well, right now I write for Annie's Fiction, which is like, they do continuity series, and it's a subscription-based model. So I write regularly for them, and I'm right now revising a novel that's due to them in November, but I'm trying to get it done early. And that's a lot of fun. It's this really cute little contemporary story. And then I'm also writing a short story for the Mosaic collection, which you mentioned when you did the bio. This is a group of 12 authors, some of us from the United States, some of us from Canada, and we're all writing novels in different genres, really, but we are they're indie published, but we're marketing them under this Mosaic collection banner. And so we're putting out a Christmas short story collection. So I've got to get my short story written. So I'm working on it too. Yeah.
So what are you currently reading?
What am I currently reading? Well, yesterday I finished a book on Homer. The poet.
Oh, I know who he is. Yeah.
I finished that, and it was really good. Tomorrow or Saturday, I'm going to start Unbound, which is just released, and it is one of the Mosaic collection books. So I've got things to do today and tomorrow, but Saturday I'm going to read it, and I'm interviewing the author Eleanor Burton this week for Novelist or next week for Novelist Unwind. So I'm going to be reading that. So yeah, I'm reading nonfiction things right now.
Well, going back to Homer, I read The Odyssey as my first real book when I was in junior high school.
Oh, really?
Yes. And I fell in love with reading because of that book.
Wow, that's really cool, because it's not an easy book to read.
It definitely is not, but I read it twice. I loved it so much.
Oh, that's so cool.
So that was my big book that started my reading career.
Well, I guess I should say too, I'm also reading Moby Dick, because my sister gave me this poster about a year ago, and it's 100 essential novels. So I'm kind of going across, and if I've already read it and I don't want to read it again, I'm not, but I'm on Moby Dick, and I have been reading it since like probably March. I'm not making very big headway, but I am trying, and I am going to get through it before the end of the year. Not my favorite book.
Well, before I turn it over to some questions, I want to ask you this, and I have to read it because it's a question that you ask everybody at the end of you interviewing people. So this is it. When you are done writing, what do you do to unwind?
Yes, I do. I ask that to everybody, and it's so fun to hear their answers. And it really just depends, because sometimes it's a matter of just sending something in and then right away getting started on the very next project. I mean, God has blessed me with multiple contracts, and which is good, but it can also be a little overwhelming. And other times, if that's not the case, it's nice just to be able to sit and to read and to watch, binge watch something on television and go to a movie and, just kind of step away from creating characters and writing dialogue and thinking about that all the time. So.
Well, seeing movies, you've just reminded me that the Down Abbey movie's coming out in a few weeks. So I know that I'm going to be going to see it.
Me too. I'm so excited. Can hardly wait to see that movie.
My husband is going with me, by the way, because he has watched every season with me.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Anybody have a question? Well, Marion in our group has a question.
Okay.
What happened to the baby?
What happened to the baby? Yes.
It's a big spoiler alert. I will tell you, I didn't, when I wrote that, I did not know that's what was going to happen. In fact, originally, now remember again that I'm writing this after having written this story where Ian is a widower. In Marie's story, she knows him and he thinks Allison is dead.
Right. And
so when I first started writing what became Where Treasure Hides, Allison dies, and that was my intent, but as I was writing the story, I couldn't do it. I just absolutely could not.
Well, we're glad you didn't.
Do it. I am too. I just could not do it. But in that earlier story, he mentions that she was pregnant when she died. So it's like, okay, so she's got to be pregnant to keep, if I'm going to keep those stories connected. And I didn't know. And I will tell you the epilogue, the very last page of the story where that's Skylar. It's 5 or 6 years have passed. And it just came to me and I wrote it. And it was one of those kind of magical writing moments when the words just flowed. And except for changing, I think, a couple of verb tenses or something like that, it is pretty much as it was. Right now, Skylar is living in Argentina with Theodore, and his parents don't know that he's alive. So.
Wow.
Has she thought about a sequel so we find out what happens?
Okay.
Boy, as he grows up.
They're looking for the sequel.
Okay, well, I did do a sequel in NaNoWriMo a couple years after that, and I would love to write the sequel, but I've had other contracts and obligations, so I just haven't been able to really get back to it. And that draft did not turn out as well as I had hoped it would. I know what needs to happen, and it just didn't have the emotional punch in that draft, so I really need to work on it.
Well, we're asking that all of your other things that are on your list, that you make this a priority.
I really do want to. I mean, when I was moving the last time, I found like the printout of the whole thing. And it's like, oh, I want to write this story. But in it, and it made me cry. I mean, there were parts of it as I was writing, I just cried and cried because Skylar does, he thinks the woman in the painting is his mom. He's not, he just doesn't know. He thinks she's the mom instead, and she's actually, of course, his grandmother. So when he finally, and there's this whole thing about their eyes, right? It's
right.
Allison has these gray blue eyes. Her father does. Her grandfather does. Skylar does. So when she sees him, when they come together and they're meeting at this art thing, this art event that is honoring her father, and of course that's the only clue that Skylar has to his family is this artist's name, so he's attending this. She knows right away that's her son, and it's a very emotional scene, and he's angry. It's like, why did you leave me? I mean, there's just all this. He's an adult, young adult, and all this comes out. But what has to happen, I will tell you guys this, what has to happen is that Theodore somehow there has to be a situation where he ends up dying to save Skylar and Allison from being killed for some reason. And I had it worked out with another Nazi guy, because they're in Argentina, and that is true. That's where a lot of the Nazi people went.
Yep.
And there would still be tensions there between them. So So again, in the draft, as I wrote it, it didn't really work the way I want it to, but I really think that that is what has to happen to give Theodore that arc, that he has to come to that place where he's going to sacrifice his life to save Allison and Skylar, and then there will be the family reunion. So
As you're talking about this, I want you to know I got the chills.
oh, really? Well, that's a good sign.
That's a good sign. Yeah, that's a very good
I
sign.
really want to work on it, but it just honestly, I've had too many other characters floating in my head and talking to me that I haven't been able to concentrate on.
No.
Dear little Skylar.
No pressure, but we want the release date.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I will tell you guys, when I even just now, like getting back into this story, every time I go back, like I'm going to be talking about this story and go back into it, it just takes me back to this place. It's hard to describe, but it is just such a, I don't even like to use the word magical, but it's just like there's just something about this story, and I go back into it, and it just takes me right back to all of it, everything that went on. And I was rereading different parts, and I thought, wow, this is really good. Did I actually write it? Not to brag or anything, but really it's like, wow.
You can brag all you want because it's really great.
The words are really good.
Anybody else have any questions? Well, they're being quiet right now. Oh my gosh. So talk about your relationship with your daughter, and have you done anything together?
We haven't. No, let me think. Well, she lives in Florida. I am right now in Oklahoma, so we're kind of far away, but we have lived, before I moved here, I was living just about, 2 miles from them, and that was really fun. And we would spend a lot of time together and work on, sit across from the table with each other and work on our own little things. And that was always a good time. I just try to be really supportive, of all the things that she's doing, and, she supports me too. And it really is, it's just it's a nice relationship to have. And then I've got another daughter, Jillian, who has written a devotional book. She self-published it, and she is actually more involved in the world of blogging and with body positivity. So she's got a very strong voice, and that's how she uses her talent. And then I have a son who says he will never write anything.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I have a few questions that are off the cuff.
Okay.
So, what was the best advice you've ever received? It can be personally or as a writer.
Ooh.
See,
Best advice I've ever received. That is a hard one because there's so many different aspects of that. I think it's just, and it's advice I give to other people too, is just not to give up. If it's your dream, mm-hmm. and we're not all going to be, best-selling authors or, anything like that, but still, whatever your dream is, I really believe God puts that in your heart. And if there's any kinds of affirmations to continue it, I just feel like you should. Mm-hmm. And, we all get rejected, and if you quit after those rejections, your dream isn't going to be fulfilled. And there have been bumps on the way. I think I've said in Writers Chat more than once, there have been times when I would say to Bethany, I'm done. I'm just done. I can't do this anymore. And then I go to sleep and I wake up the next morning and there's a line in my head or a character in my head or something. And it's like, okay, yeah, I can still do this. So, just persistence is so important. Just do the best you can.
I know for myself, working on my very first book, I will find myself, if I'm laying in bed and I'm thinking of something, I'll grab my phone and speak into my notes section because I know by the time I get up in the morning, I will forget it.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I think prayer is very important, just to code things in prayer and to pray that God is watching over your journey, because I have also found on more than one occasion when a no, and even a couple no's that have been really devastating. As time went on and you kind of learned a little bit more about what was going on that you didn't know at the time you received the no, it was a good thing it was a no.
Right.
And so, you're praying for God's protection over you too. And I think that's really important. So, don't get freaked out by no's, because it may be God protecting you, or it may be God saying no to this because there's something better coming. And that's a good thing. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about Serious Writer and what type of topics they're on there, because it's such an incredible Facebook page, and to talk to, and you not only get to hear it, but you get to ask questions as well. So maybe share a little bit about that.
Okay. Serious Writer was started by Bethany and her agent, Kyle Young. So actually Bethany had Serious Writer before that, before they joined up, and Kyle was also doing similar things, and they decided that instead of being competitors, they would, be whatever the other word would be. They would be partners.
Collaborators. How about collaborators?
Yes, I knew there was a C word and it wasn't coming. So they joined forces and then actually did incorporate and all that. So they have a wonderful, if you're interested in writing at all, they have a wonderful Serious Writer Community Facebook page. There's also the Serious Writer Club, which does charge a monthly fee, but
which I'm part of that, which is incredible.
So yes, I mean, I know they do a lot of videos, they do a lot of extra teaching in that, but there's also a lot in the community. And then in the academy, there are all kinds of classes. I don't even know how many there are right now. But if you're interested, what I really suggest you do is sign up for the Serious Writer newsletter, because it is jam-packed with information and links. And Bethany is working on a master's degree. And oh my gosh, I'm not going to get the whole thing right, but it's marketing, but it's kind of specialized marketing. I think she's in our last semester now, that we're sort of on the downward slope for all of that. And she puts links in there and information that she's learning from her graduate program and her classes, which is really good, because a lot of writing for us these days is marketing, whether we like it or not. I mean, that's just the reality. So it's really good to have those kinds of resources. So, they're the classes. I teach a couple, 2 or 3 classes on the air, and they're affordable. They don't, they're not charging a lot. And there's always there's often coupon codes and different things like that. So you can get a break on it. But yeah, if you're wanting to write, or, pursue a writing career at all, they are definitely a wonderful, wonderful resource. So
you posted, I think, something today that was a great resource. I think it was today. It had a link, all of these great
on Pinterest. I put that in the Writers Chat fiction group, or no, the Writers Chat members group.
Yes.
And I don't have it, but some of us are getting ready to participate in NaNoWriMo this November to write our 50,000 unedited words. And so,
can I say something? That's not me. That's not me. Okay.
You're not doing it.
I'm not doing it yet. Next year.
Well, that's fine. I haven't done it in years, but this is a good year for me to do it, so I'm going to do it. And so in October, as that program has kind of grown, I mean, it has just become so big. October, people get ready and they call it Preptober. So if you just Google Preptober, you will find all kinds of information. And I found this Pinterest site that had all these worksheets for characters and settings and questions, and help you get prepared, because you can't actually start writing your novel till November 1st. So, but you can do a lot of the background work.
In October. Okay. So if you were 18 again, this would be a tough question for me. If you were 18 again, is there any advice you would give yourself?
Yeah, I would say, don't be afraid. Be brave, take the risk. And I definitely wish that I had started writing much, much sooner and had that confidence in myself. And because it is really what I love to do, and I think what I'm meant to do. And I just am really regretful that I let so many years go by where I just let it be a dream. And I mean, I would read books on writing all the time. It was like it was just so hard, but I'd write, starts of things and never finish. And but again, it was one of those dreams, like I didn't want to be told, because so many people have that dream, and I didn't want to be told you're no good. So, it was hard to face that fear. But I wish, I wish that I'd kind of grown up with the inspirational market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember growing up, and there was not a lot of talk in my family about, inspiration, about, what are you going to do with your future? It was just, you get married and you have kids. And yes. And so for myself, I wish that I had looked at things a little differently then. I mean, I'm grateful I had got married, had 5 children, but my dreams, I kind of lost those in the process of that. And I certainly don't regret having my children. But
No.
it took me many years before I began to feel some of those dreams again and begin to fulfill them.
And I think that's typical of women. I mean, I think a lot of women go through that we do sort of, because you have to take care of those kids, and I'm also thankful for the job I had, which was really, I was blessed to be in the district office of a state representative. So I mean, that was really, I did a lot of constituent work. It was, I didn't have to do much of the politics necessarily, but I mean, it was pretty cool, some of the things I got to do in that position. And so, it's always hard, because I'm thankful for that, and I'm thankful for the lessons I learned from doing that. But yeah, I also kind of wish I'd just been writing all those years and having books published.
Yes, and having books published, yes. So where would you envision yourself 10 years from now?
Oh my goodness. Well, I will tell you that in like 2008 or 2009, I was at the Florida Christian Writers Conference for the second or third year, depending on which year it was, with Jean Wise, who's another one of the hosts on Writers Chat, and that's where we met.
Yes.
At the Florida.
She's wonderful.
Pardon?
She's wonderful.
She is wonderful, and we became friends, and then we were roommates. We're always roommates if we go to the same conference, and she asked me, okay, so I'm not published, I don't have an agent yet, none of that. And she said, what would you be happy with? And I said, I'd be happy if I could write 10 books. Well, I think I'm on my 10th or 11th one right now, which is really cool. So then, when you say, 10 years in the future, I want to have written the sequel to Where Treasure Hides.
Okay. Yay!
That's a biggie. That is definitely a biggie. And I really, I think all of us do. Oh my gosh, I probably have 3 or 4 stories that just are really tugging at me, and just, that I want to write. So, we'll see. Hopefully at least 1 or 2 of them will get written too. So I just don't want to be writing. I mean, yeah.
Somebody asked me this question the other day. So they said, when you pass away, what would you like to see written on your tombstone? And that was a question that's, it's made me think about it. So I thought I would ask you, and then I could tell you one of the things I'd like to have on mine. I would love to have lover of books, because that is something that I would love to have. Obviously, maybe some other things, but that would be one of the things. Mother, grandmother, but lover of books would be the one.
I've been asked this before, and I wrote it because I had time to think about it and write it really pithy. But just off the top of my head, it would be something along the lines of cherishing memories and making memories. And that's what I would be remembered for, was that making memories was important to me. And that's a value that I've passed on to my children too. So so it's also very important to them. So
I agree. I agree with that. I know that I'm very grateful that my 4 children and I, you all still get along, all still love each other. That is a big deal in today's world. So I'm loving that. And my grandchildren. Is there?
Did you say it?
Okay, we have a question.
Okay.
How long did it take you? Did she hear that it took you to write the book?
This one, well, so I wrote the rough draft in like 30 days. That doesn't really count, because it wasn't even in that one. Allison was not even in the story, so it was different. It probably took me 2 years to write it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was pretty steady. But again, there was a lot of research, and a lot of research, a lot of note taking, and and I remember I had this piece of like just big white paper, and I stuck it on a door, the back behind a door, and I used all these dates, because I had the dates of different things that happened during the war, and then I had, like I said, Ian's story was a little bit already dictated by what had happened in the other book that I'm still hoping to get published, and those on there, and then things that like I knew I wanted him to be at Dunkirk. I knew I wanted him to be at Colditz Castle, and then how was he going to get out of that and all of this. So that was part of the whole plotting process. But at that time, I'm not so much now. At that time, I was more what you call a seat of the pants writer, where I just sort of would write, So that was about the only guide I had, was these events. So I would be writing towards these events. And it's like, and a lot of it was Ian. How am I going to get Ian from one place to another? And then how am I going to get Allison, from one place to another? So that takes a really long time when you're writing that way. I have learned from writing these books for Annie's Fiction, because they want, as part of the contract, they want a chapter summary and a synopsis, but especially the chapter summary. So they kind of want to know what's going to happen throughout the book. And I can write those books in about 6 weeks. That's draft, but it's pretty good draft. And then it takes me another week or two to revise it. So, I mean, it's a much different process. It's a much different outcome too, because those books certainly aren't as deep or have the angst or the themes that a book like this does. This one has got a lot in there.
It does. So I'm trying to think about the first time you would have gotten a contract for a book, what you felt like, and like I would have been dancing my party dance or something like that.
Yeah, I was very, very, very excited to get that phone call from my agent. It was the second book. She had tried to sell that first one, and nobody had picked it up. But that was because of that manuscript, I got my agent. Mm-hmm. And so then we went with this one, and it was shortly after it was announced that it had won the Genesis contest that we got the call from Tyndale. And it was pretty fabulous. And at the time you think, oh, my dreams have come true, I'm on my way, it's just going to be, and of course that isn't true, but so you sort of learn on the way, and you have some humbling things happen and all, but all in all, it's been a good journey. So I'm glad to be on it.
That's great. Yeah, we got a question.
Yeah, she's talking about a novel that was written that had.
Yeah, so she said she thought you were talking about a novel that was written with Ian in it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not out yet. I am working on it. I call it Sparrow because that is Marie's her code name. So again, in this book, the American actress that Ian's involved with for a while with that mission, her name's Marie, her code name is Sparrow, and that's her story. And it actually was written first. It was written before Where Treasure Hides. So yeah, I just sort of had to, keep Ian's story consistent, because I knew I always knew I wanted to have it done. It has gone through, it's a complicated book. It's a complicated story, because you see Marie as she is during the war, but you also have her as an older woman looking back on her war experiences and telling the story to her granddaughter, who does not know that this is her grandmother because of things that had happened. Mm-hmm. And so, again, it just has a lot of themes in it, a lot of angst in it too. But I have been working on it. I've rewritten different parts of it, because again, it's so complex, and I am working with a very well-known editor to make it the best it can be, because I really got a little bit lost in the story, mm-hmm. where I wasn't trusting my own self, because it's like it could go this way, and I don't know what's the best way, so really she has just been so helpful to me to find that direction for that story. And hopefully, yeah, I'm really hoping it's going to be out next year. So
Okay. That was going to be my next question. So we'll all be looking for that.
yeah, please, because yeah, I think it's going to be a great story. I've learned a lot working with this editor, and it's been really cool. And Marie's story is one again also that just touches my heart, because it's just very she goes through a lot.
And you won't tell us anything else.
Nope.
I didn't think so. Anybody else have a question? Nope, it doesn't look like we do. So, in closing, I guess, is there anything else that you can think of that you might want to tell us about your book, or, even just for people that are, like I have a writers group in my home once a month. And so nobody has been published yet, but, everybody is working on something, or we always do something educational. And so I know, there's hopes and dreams there.
Absolutely.
And even for myself, obviously. And I know that, rejection is a difficult thing at times. Yes. So what can you, I know you've touched this a little bit, and just encouraging, and even for somebody who hasn't even started to write yet, I know some people that are great journalers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much in there that they could use to, to just start, beginning to write. So what words of encouragement? I know you've already said some things, but, I really feel that, that this is a world, my world now is so much of this. I never thought my life would be here, never.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about it. I'm also a little scared about it as well. Well, maybe a little bit more than little.
I think, well, it is scary. It is scary because you're putting something out there. You're always wondering, is this good enough? No matter how much you've done with it.
Or am I good enough?
Am I good enough? Yeah. Am I really hearing God right in this? But I think if you've got that dream to write, lots of times other people in the family don't really understand that it's going to take a long time, and about how much quiet time you need and contemplative time you need and all this. So I think it's really important to have, a community. And so I love it that you have that group in your home. Saturday, I'm going to, a group here, and it's just, it's just wonderful to be able just to talk to other people who get it, who understand the struggles, who understand how hard it is. And yet we love it so much that no matter how hard it is, we can't give it up. We just have to keep at it. But like when the words don't come, or, it can be really, really difficult. So, I think it's important to find other people, and it's important to learn because, and I make mistakes. I mean, I get editors, saying, oh, you should know better than this or whatever. But there are certain things that occur over and over and over again in people's writings when they're just starting out. And I've gotten to the point where I can do some editing, and I love talking to people about their manuscripts and doing like manuscript evaluations. Mm-hmm. And, it's the same thing. So they have so you can have these wonderful stories and you can have these wonderful ideas, but you also have to have the craft, and the craft is very, very important. Mm-hmm. And it's often, the weaknesses are pretty much the same with every new writer. So it's like you've got to learn, like show, don't tell, except you also have to know when to tell, don't show. There's that balance there. And being in a deep point of view, and the little tricks that you can do to make sure that you're staying in a deep point of view. Don't head hop. I mean, there are just certain things that we tend to do as newer writers that we just need to not do, because it'll make our writing so much stronger. Being very active, strong nouns, active verbs. That's what you want to look for. So, but you learn that from being with other people. So I think a critique group is really important. It helps you get your things critiqued, but when you're critiquing other people, you learn what it is that's wrong. You have to say, this doesn't sound right, but you have to give them a reason. You can't just say it doesn't sound right. So that helps you grow as a writer too. So I think that community is really important. And just pray about it, pray about your journey, pray about opportunities. understand that a no, as devastating as can be, maybe a protection, maybe because there's something else. And so don't let it just throw you too much. I mean, it's okay to cry. It's okay. But have that person that you can, talk to and cry with, and he's going to understand what
Yeah.
you're going through.
Mine is my husband. I think I can drive him crazy a little bit.
But that's good. See, and mine's Bethany. I mean, and my sister actually, which is very interesting because she's
She
an
just
avid
moved recently,
reader.
right?
Yeah, she did. Yeah. So yeah, we're all moving. And she doesn't read Christian fiction at all. We have a little bit different views on some things, and yet she is one of my strongest cheerleaders and actually a very good brainstorming partner. And I can call her and say, listen, I'm really having trouble with this, and here's the situation. I don't know what to do. And she knows the questions to ask me. And I mean, she loves doing it, and I love doing it with her. And again, she's not a writer, and she's definitely not a Christian writer. So, but she's very, very supportive and an avid reader in other genres. So she does know good writing when she sees it. So that's good too. So yeah, I guess find that person is just one of my biggest things.
I will
Yeah.
say this about my husband. He's a master chef. So
Really?
he will do a lot of the cooking for me while I am involved in other areas. So I'm really appreciative of that. Honey, I love you if you're watching this.
I tell you, if you have a spouse that is supportive of you, hug them, because I know that there are a lot of writers who do not have that. And it always breaks my heart when I see that somebody's trying and their husband, and it usually is. It's usually a husband who's just expecting a lot and demanding a lot and not giving that free time. And I will say I'm divorced, and my husband actually was pretty supportive, but so the divorce was other reasons. But you do need that kind of thing. Yeah.
I've been divorced too, so I totally get it.
Yeah. But I could not lay that at his feet. He tried to be very supportive, so that was always appreciated.
Are there any more questions? I'm not seeing any. I just want to say, here is the book, Where Treasure Lies, or that hides.
Hides, where treasure
I
hides.
said, yes. Forget that. Take two. This is take two.
Take
Where
two.
Treasure Hides.
I love the cover. I mean, I get
I love
compliments
it
on
too.
the cover, and of course, I had nothing to do with it, but I get compliments on it all the time. So thank you, Tyndale, for such a great cover. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is quite beautiful. No more questions? Well,
No.
Johnnie Alexander, what a treat to have you with us tonight.
This has been fun. The time just goes so fast. Thank you. I can't see your faces, but thank you all.
Hold on, I'm going to actually turn this around so that you can see the women that are here, and hopefully you'll get to see a few of them.
Let's see how this goes. Oh, there we go. Door. Oh, look at you guys. Hi. This is wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yes, I didn't want you to think I was here all by myself and that I was lying to you.
No, that's great. That is so great what you're doing, Jo. And
Thank you so
I will tell you, authors appreciate and I'm just going to ask you, if you love the book, I would love it if you could do a review on Amazon.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be long, just something about what you liked about it. And I hope that it does touch your heart, and it's a book that will stay with you long. I did have a review. I think this one was on Goodreads, where the woman said, "Don't take this book camping." She took it with her on a camping trip with her family, and spent the whole time in her tent, in her own words, ugly crying, instead of being with her family. So, but, it's just like, oh, that's a great review, but sorry for her family.
I think we can understand that, because I know that I went through it and could not put it down. I'm not the only one, but I wasn't camping.
Makes me cry. Yeah, no, it still makes me cry. I mean, I was driving once and thinking about it and got to crying and stopped at a traffic light and really did not remember. I had to think about where I was and where I was going because I got so involved in it. It's like I wrote it, but still, yeah. Yeah.
Well, when you have your next book come out, we would definitely love to promote it in whatever way we can. You were saying, I appreciate your words about the book club. This really started 15 years ago when I lived in New York. It started in the homes of women, and we would meet every month, and we would read a book. And of course, we'd always have food and, something like that. And then it moved to a church in New York. And then I moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana. And now we are actually meeting in my home church, the chapel, which is in Fort Wayne. And they allow us to use a room here. So we are very appreciative of that. And the best thing is we get to actually talk to the author, which is just absolutely incredible.
Isn't that fun? I mean, technology makes that really fun.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your help. This is the first time we're using Zoom, so everything worked out really well.
Yay.
I'm always happy when those things work.
Absolutely.
And, yes, and I will make sure people know about Serious Writer and how to connect with all those other sites.
Yeah.
And we appreciate you so much. And
well, God bless you all. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. It's been really great.
That's for you, girl.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay.